What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Ableton Music Producer Podcast. This is Dan Giffen. Today, my guest, Ali Stone, is joining us, which I was super stoked to have her on the podcast. She is a Grammy-nominated and multi-platinum music producer, a multi-instrumentalist, singer-songwriter, and artist from Colombia. She was named by Billboard as one of the Latin Hitmakers of 2021. She has been making huge strides with her work, composing several movie soundtracks, remixing other top artists, producing for the likes of RBD, Mary J, Blige, many others. She also has performed major festivals, including EDC, and was one of the opening acts for Justin Bieber's Purpose World Tour. So she's done a lot of really interesting things. Excited to have her on the podcast. Today we talk about her experience moving from Colombia to LA to pursue a music career, her process for composing and starting tracks, how she created her Splice sample pack, which was pretty dope, and I downloaded it and played with it. I invite you to check that out as well. And she scored music for a horror film, as well as doing a remix for Monsters University. Some really interesting stuff in this episode that she shares. But before we dive in, I want to give a huge shout out to our friends at Melodics, who are sponsoring this episode. Big fan of their desktop app that you can download. You can plug in almost any MIDI controller you want or an electric drum set and jam out, and it'll gamify the practicing experience for you. It's way more fun to practice to something like Melodics and step up your skills producing, finger drumming. There's a lot of options and genres and lesson plans in there, and everybody loves free, so check out the free subscription. Go check that out at melodics.com. That's melodics.com if you haven't already. And if you decide to join their subscription, make sure you use the discount code LPO-20. That's LPO-20 and save that money. Go give Melodics some love. It's a great company and they're doing good things. Also, if you don't own the latest version of Ableton Live 11, then I would be happy to hook you up with a discount. Just go to liveproducersonline.com/buyableton. Happy to hook you up. Also, if you haven't joined the newsletter yet, go to liveproducersonline.com/newsletter, and you'll be the first to get new podcast episodes when they come out, as well as other content that I'll be doing with like online events, giving away free packs and things. So check that out, join the newsletter, stay connected. If you are listening on Spotify or wherever, be really grateful if you just hit that follow, subscribe button. It would help me out a lot, and I will love you forever. Thanks everybody for listening to the podcast. Without wasting any more time, let's jump into this episode with Ali Stone. Sounds great. How have you been?
Good. Working on this past month, basically producing an album for an artist from Chile, like a 12-track album. So it's been...
Oh, wow.
Yeah, no, and it's a fun project. And it's kind of like alternative Latin, but there's also like pop songs, then some that have a little bit of rock. So kind of like a little bit of everything.
Yeah, no, I'm into that. I can never just work on like the same style of music always for a really long time. I get bored.
The same to me.
Yeah, you got to mix it up, right?
Totally.
Well, thank you so much for joining the podcast. It's an honor to have you here. You've done a lot of really cool projects and work with a lot of great artists in the industry. So yeah, I'm excited. I know you're an Ableton family member, so it's always a pleasure to meet other Ableton people.
Nice, thank you.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, cool. And you just released a sample pack with Splice not too long ago, or when was that?
I made that sample pack actually in 2018, like right after I moved to LA. They reached out to me, because they wanted a sample pack, like focused mostly on like electronic stuff, which was like the main thing I produced for my career, for my artist project. That's mostly electronic.
Yeah.
So like I just put like some of my sounds that I usually use in my everyday productions.
Yeah, I was
riffs and everything. Yeah,
I actually just used 349 of my credits for your sample pack. I just downloaded all of them. I logged into Splice this morning and I was like, I have 4,800 credits that I'm probably never going to use all of them. And I was going through a lot of your Splice samples. I was like, this is really cool. This is dope. So I was like, screw it. I'm just going to download all of them. So I did.
Amazing. Yeah, no, I'm glad that you downloaded the samples. And it's always fun, like, to listen how people end up using those samples. Like I'd love to hear whenever you use them, like let me know, show me, because it's interesting. Like I've seen, yes, especially like the Foley and like percussion sounds that I made, like how people have used them. It's like, that's interesting.
Yeah. That's the fun thing about Ableton Live as well, is you can use those samples and like come up with 700 million happy accidents, really, and it always turns out different.
Yeah, just turning the knobs and like like buttons, and then it's like, you have a new sound.
Yeah, my friend, just one example of that, he had a peacock. He lives in like Jamaica, I think it was, and on his push he just set a quantize and he put a bunch of food on it, and the peacock was like pecking each button, but it was in time to a bunch of samples that he had in Splice. It's funny, but I'd love to talk more about your Splice workflow, or like how you built that sample pack to release in a little bit. But you did mention you just moved to LA, what, like 3 or 4 years ago?
Yeah, 3 years ago.
Yeah. How's that been? Because you moved from Colombia, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Directly from Colombia to LA. And it's been great, actually. As soon as I got here, it was a little bit scary because I didn't even know like people here. So it was like starting all over again, and seeing like I have to knock on doors to basically start like paying the bills, like get jobs and everything. Because I also, when I moved here, I was mostly focused on my artist career. But then it was like I need to pay the bills and I can make songs for other people. So I'm just gonna start producing songs for people, writing songs and everything. And I came here only with my laptop and a pair of headphones and this synth from Roland that was like small enough to be on my backpack. But that was it, basically. Like I left all of my studio back in Colombia.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, even in that, it was kind of like I just have to build my studio all over again. Yeah, because to bring things, it was kind of like unthinkable.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was kind of like a rough start in the beginning. But thankfully, like I was kind of like super persistent. And even in that thing of like building a catalog just to be able to show people like, this is what I do. Like I just put myself to make music, like whatever it was, like not only electronic, which was like my own thing, but R&B, hip hop, even like reggaeton, like anything. And like to be able to show people like, I can do this. Like if you need somebody to make that, like I'll make it for you. So that's basically how my career here as a producer and songwriter took off too, because it was kind of like I'm just saying yes to opportunities. Like, whenever people ask like, hey, can you produce this or that, or do you write this? It was like, I'll do it. Like even if I done it before, it was like, sure, I'll do it.
I can do that. Sure. I'll figure it out as I go. Yeah, I've done that before too. Well, that was a huge leap of faith for you, just to jump to Colombia to LA, and you moved to LA just to become a producer, right? Just to grow your artist.
Yeah, exactly. Like to kind of like expand my horizon, and also because I was thinking about working on more diverse music, like especially, for example, I also make music for video games, for film, TV. I like making like all sorts of things, like even you were saying that you like to stay kind of like dynamic and making different music like every day. That's the same with me. Like I love to be making maybe a rock song, and then I'm making like a super folky, and then like reggaeton, super popular, and then like something for soundtrack, kind of like always changing. And I did feel that LA had like that kind of like creative hub, because I was actually thinking when I was about to move, like about LA or New York, which I love New York, but actually I saw it more as kind of like a city to perform as a DJ. Like it was great for that, but I really wanted to dig into like the creative part. So it was like, I'm going with LA basically.
Yeah. No, honestly, I love New York City, and I lived there for a short period of time, but the vibe and the communities are like very different. I feel like New York City is so fast paced. Like, and I feel like LA is just a little bit more laid back socially, just a little bit, which I like both, but it's whatever, you know? Yeah. I mean, you've been hustling really hard. You've had some great endorsements from Roland, Native Instruments, Gibson, KRK, Audience, which they've sponsored this podcast, several others, great companies. Was that all after you moved to LA, or did you have some like endorsements and encouragement before you moved?
I had some before I moved with Gibson, actually, with Gibson and Roland. That I started, like before back in Colombia. But then, when I moved here, I started to connect more with brands and even like to kind of like strengthen the relationship with, for example, with Roland that, their headquarters are here in LA, or in Gibson that has, the Gibson showroom and everything, KRK, like all of this. Even, Universal Audio, Audience that I actually got to meet at the NAMM show, and Ableton too. That like I had always used Ableton like since I basically started producing, basically.
So
But
when was that? Like, how long ago was that?
9 years ago, 8 years
Okay.
ago.
That's about the same time I got into Ableton. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
But yeah, then here, like people were always telling me like you should link up with like Ableton because like you've been using it like all of your life of producer. And and then like, well, through the pandemic and everything, like I got connected to Cole and everything from Ableton, but they're also here in LA, so I think like that's great, like to kind of like have that access in the same place you live, because it also makes it like more reachable in a way, and it doesn't feel like so far away, because like being in Colombia, it's like
long drive. It's a long drive.
Exactly.
So back in Colombia, is there a pretty decent market for the style of music that you produce? I mean, it seems like there definitely would be, but you just kind of wanted a change and new opportunities.
Yeah, because like in Colombia, there's like an electronic scene, but I feel that it's still very much underground. Like in Colombia, the main thing is reggaeton, basically. Like that's on top. But kind of like everything that's outside that reggaeton bubble, I feel like it's a little bit underground, especially now that like reggaeton is kind of like topping all of the charts and everything.
Okay, interesting.
So like even, for example, while I was living in Colombia, like I would usually have shows, like in New York, in Arizona, in Miami, like of DJing and electronic festivals, basically, and playing like the Electric Daisy Carnival and all of this. So like I knew like maybe in the US there's like a bigger scene of like all this music that I make of my electronic project that's more reachable in an audience.
Sure.
Consuming that music like more constantly. But like I do feel like the scene in Colombia did grow up like from like the moment I began to play, like in 2013 until like now. Like there's been totally like a bigger surge. But for example, I feel that Mexico has a bigger EDM and electronic audience.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I know Mexico definitely, especially like, I feel like underground house music is really starting to blow up in Mexico. Just, I know that through a couple of my friends.
Yeah.
Well, the music you make is really, really cool. It's definitely got a good vibe, and you're an extremely talented producer, if I haven't said that already. But congrats on your newer music video, Crudo. But where was that filmed at?
I actually filmed that one in Malibu.
Okay. Yeah, it was beautiful.
Thank you. And we filmed it during the pandemic, so it was nice in a way that like basically there was nobody like in the beach. Like it was me like filming the video. We filmed it like in the end of August. Basically like almost a year ago. But
I was gonna say there's not many people in the video. It's only you. So like but it looked great. Like production was on point. It was very nice.
Thank you. Yeah, and since like the song has this kind of like very summery vibe, feeling like very laid back and everything, like I just wanted something that visually represented like that kind of like easy feeling of like just good vibes and chill and everything.
Yeah. People needed that in the last year and a half for sure. They needed good warm vibes. Yeah. Well, you're working on a new album right now, is that right? How's that going?
Well, actually, this album that I'm working on is super fun because it's also full of collaboration, which is like a kind of like a new thing for me, because I usually for my artist stuff, like I've always done everything like by myself, alone and everything. So in this one, I'm having some artists, as guests, singing in the songs, and we also wrote the songs together. So it's nice, because it's kind of like seeing like another way of like making my music too. And this one is like super like eclectic. Like it has like some very weird stuff that I don't even know like which genre it is. Like all of them have like this electronic line basically, which is kind of like present in all my productions, like electronic backbone. But there's some that have like hard rock guitar riffs, others that have like more of a folky, like Andean folky vibe. They're all in Spanish too.
Okay.
Another one like super, super pop. So yeah, it's kind of like a contrast of like the different colors that I have like inside my head. Yeah. And then mixing them like, with all of my influences. The Spanish. There's some that are like Spanglish too. So it's kind
Spanglish.
of like
I failed Spanish class in 9th grade, so
really?
I need to work on my Spanglish and just Spanish in general. It's pretty bad.
Yeah. Well, maybe with my songs you can practice.
Yeah, if I just learn to sing all of your songs, I'll just know Spanish. That's all I need, right? Yeah. Okay, perfect.
Like conversation.
Yeah, exactly. Perfect. So right now, you said you're working on that new album. What is your process for starting a new song? Do you have like a Ableton Live template that you start with your sounds, and maybe it just varies so much in different ways because you write different genres?
I like the starting template that I have in Ableton is basically just like with the bus, like with the sense that I usually kind of like use like hands-on. That like the first one is parallel compression. Like I have the A channel for that, the B one for room, and then C for delay. Like that's kind of like my main template because I always start like with the drums. So like adding the kick, snare, whatever, and always send it like straight to parallel compression, like to hear it like straight up in my face, basically.
Yeah.
But yeah, like as for like a bigger template of like tracks and stuff, like I don't have that. It's only basically like with the sense, with the bus channels, and then it all depends like on. It's kind of like a case by case thing because sometimes I have like ideas of like a drum pattern or something, or kind of like a rhythmic thing in my head. Others it's like I'll start like maybe with ideas in the guitar or piano, like to kind of like have some melodic progression, and then start to build from that, kind of like record maybe like a mini guitar riff or something, and then just loop it to kind of like start building even with layers, adding synths or like bass lines, kind of like whatever I'm feeling to do in that moment. And like for my music, when I'm working like on my own stuff, I usually begin with the instrumental things. It's kind of like I need to have like that instrumental idea first, and I'll bring in like the vocals and like the lyrics. Like it's kind of like first melody and then lyrics. But when I'm working with other people, it's kind of like melody and lyrics at the same time. So it depends to also like when I'm writing songs for others, for example, we usually start like super raw, kind of like me playing guitar or piano and just throwing in ideas. And when we have the kind of like the full song ready, we just record everything in Ableton to kind of like, okay, now let's get the full demo going. So
interesting. So that's interesting. Yeah. So when you're by yourself, you said you a lot of times start with drums and then you come up with melodies and then the lyrics on top of that. Yeah. It's so interesting because I know a lot of vocalists and a lot of them have different processes with that. Sometimes they'll just like write all the lyrics down when they're like stuck in traffic. They'll just like, text it down and then come back later. There's a lot of different ways. But that's really interesting. And it probably helps writing a lot of different genres and collaborating with other people because you play like every instrument, it seems like. You play a lot of instruments. You got a drum set behind you, which is lovely. Is that a Roland?
Yeah, this is the V drums from Roland.
Yes, I actually have my V drums over here too.
Oh, really?
Well, you can see it. There they are.
Amazing!
Little hybrid kit thing going on.
Super cool.
I think I unplugged my camera. Hold on. It's fine. I got another camera. You ready? Boom. Perfect. There we are. We're back. My first time. Now. Yeah, I mean, so your Splice sample pack, maybe we can talk a little bit about that because I saw you had a lot of Foley sounds in there. Did you go to a studio or did you record it at home?
Yeah, I actually recorded everything at home, like right here, because this is also like like my studio where I basically moved, like 3 years ago. Like it's been the same place. So I just recorded everything here. And yeah, it was kind of like being super creative, like just moving my microphone around like the house, for example, for the Foley that I recorded, like some high heels, like walking. So I would just put like down and then like record and start walking. Yeah, it was kind of like all by myself.
That's great. I love that.
And yeah, like there's some other sounds, like even in that Foley, for example, that there's one where I recorded myself like biting a cherry and like kind of like the sound of like a cherry, and then just making it as a snare, basically, like adding reverb and like distortion. Yeah, one with a celery, kind of like using stuff from my house, and it was like, yeah, like I'll just use that and also like turn some of them like into sounds that can be like snare, a hi-hat, a kick, or like, yeah, always processing. And I basically recorded all of them, yeah, also in Ableton. And it was, yeah, like a long process because they asked me like for 300 something samples, like 300 minimum. So it was like, okay, I have to come up like with a lot of sample ideas. And I also remember like in the requirements, they asked me like they all had to be normalized, like to kind of like the same volume, basically. Yeah, and then like that was super easy, for example, in Ableton, because it was just like consolidating the clip and then like bringing down the decibel like to -1 dB.
Okay.
You know, that was super easy. Like for me, I know of other people, yeah, that have done like the samples and they have to send it to some program or something so that it's kind of like all normalized.
Yeah. I use them. What do you use to measure that loudness as far as making sure all the samples are the same volume?
Yeah, for that, I usually use the Isotope Insight.
Oh, yeah. I love that. Yeah.
And also, well, in like native plugins, like Utility is great in Ableton or Trim in Pro Tools. Yeah, to kind of like check like where the level's hitting. But yeah, like even with that one, like I just had it on the master bus, just like to check all of the samples are kind of like in the right level. And yeah, and like the good thing is that like consolidating the sample basically, yeah, already puts the waveform, the sample in a folder. So yeah, it wasn't like I needed to bounce or something. It was just like, okay, yeah, like that's the sample.
There. Yeah. Well, it sounded great. You did a great job. Like I said, I downloaded all of them. I've listened to maybe like 20 of them. I've got a long way to go. But yeah, it sounded cool. You mentioned Isotopes Insight 2. That's for measuring the loudness. There's also a really good Max for Live device. It's like $2 or $3 for anybody listening. It's called Swiss Army Meter. Have you ever heard of that?
Oh, nice. No, I hadn't.
Yeah, Swiss Army Meter. It's pretty cheap, but it does the same thing or similar. It's not as deep, but
no, I didn't know about it, and it has a cool name. So
it does, yeah. It's just like this little thing you pull out of your pocket and just shove into Ableton. It's nice. Well, I mean, you probably had a lot of experience doing Foley and some of that stuff for the sample pack, because I think it was 2014. I read you did scoring for, it was like a horror film called Dementor.
Yeah, I made like the full soundtrack, like the complete film score of that movie.
Yeah. What was that experience like?
Yeah, it was super exciting. It was quite an experience because in that moment I was still in university studying business. So it was kind of like, studying it during the day and then at night, like writing this horror film music. So it was even, like me at 3 a.m. like making horror music. So it was kind of like, a little bit horrific in a way.
Did you sleep well, like after doing all that?
There was even I remember one time that I was like working on that soundtrack, and then like the door of my studio in Colombia opened like by itself, and it was like, I need to go to sleep. Like something weird.
That's scary. Oh, that's funny.
But no, it was a great experience, and actually the director of that movie asked me to like write the music for the film because he listened to the remix that I made for Monsters University that had happened like just before that movie, basically.
That's amazing, because I love that movie. big Monsters Inc. fan. Yeah, that's great.
But yeah, and like this remix that I made for the movie, like it had kind of like very, like cinematographic sounds and kind of like, the roars of like monsters and like very kind of like chilling stuff. So this director was like, I love this. Like it's kind of like super experimental. And I hadn't like composed film music ever, but he was like, do you want to do it? And I was like, of course. Like this is amazing. Like it's kind of like one of my dreams, like to make a film score.
Yeah.
And I love horror movies, so it was like, like this is my lane. And then it was like starting kind of like the script and everything, like kind of like even getting like a motive, like a sound motive that could repeat like throughout the whole soundtrack, kind of like really trying to translate the script into only like melody. So it was quite a challenge, but yeah, super gratifying like to do, and also super entertaining because I got to make different stuff like from my artist project basically.
Yeah, and that goes back to what we were talking about earlier in the podcast. It's just being really versatile. I mean, you went from making a horror movie to like a kids film like remix. That's pretty cool. That's great. What's like your favorite style lately to be producing? I mean, because you're working on this new album, like, can you maybe share some of that process technically, how you're doing it, or what we can expect?
Yeah, like I feel like for like style of music, like to work on, like I really love like songs that have like catchy stuff. So it would be kind of like that pop factor that has like either catchy melodies or like something that's always like sticking like in your head.
Mm-hmm.
I really like to make that kind of like ear candy. But then it depends. Yeah, like I like to apply that even like with super dark songs or like maybe happy songs. It's kind of like always finding a way of like how I can make people remember my song. So it's, I'm always kind of like thinking like, oh, maybe I'll add this or that here, like just to kind of like have them know like, this is like the hook or something.
Yeah.
And like something that I usually like to do, like regardless of like genre or whatever, is always have the drums super loud, kind of like super in your face. Like I feel it actually comes from like the electronic music like production, that's kind of like the kick is always there and like they're super snappy and everything. Also like vocal harmonies, I love that, so I'm always adding like vocals of like, even if it's for other artists, like there's usually like some vocal pads that I'm recording that kind of are in like the background, but it's kind of like always there. And that's kind of like basically my go-to things, like to always explore like regardless of the style basically.
Yeah, well, I appreciate loud drums because I've been a drummer since I was really little, and I feel like my drums are always the loudest instrument too, just because it should be. I don't know.
Exactly.
Right? Why not? And your vocals always sound really clean and great. Can you share maybe some of your vocal treatment process that you typically use?
Yeah, actually, well, for vocals, I usually do like all of my recording in Pro Tools. Actually, it's kind of like I have this hybrid work of like producing the full instrumental in Ableton, and then like the vocal part in Pro Tools. It's kind of like
interesting.
My workaround.
Is that because you're just used to using Pro Tools for that for so long that you just decided to keep? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, exactly. Because actually, when I started producing, basically, I started first with Pro Tools. Like that was like my first one. Then I switched to Ableton, but I already kind of like knew what to do in Pro Tools, like with vocals. And in that moment, like I had, the playlist and everything. So it was kind of like, like I know like already, like, especially for my vocals, like I already know how to treat them like in this program. So I just like sticked with it because it was like, it's kind of like the workflow that's like suitable for me. But for like vocal treatment, it has changed along the years. But I really love the R compressor from Waves.
Okay.
R Vox, actually, the one for the Renaissance Vox, it's called. Great for vocals. There's also
Is that for the tuning of the vocals?
That's for the compression.
Just the compression. Okay, yeah, I missed that.
For tuning, I usually use Melodyne. Melodyne, or like if I want like autotune is super cool. For example, for certain kind of like sound character. Yeah, like it adds some like kind of like
a modern EDM kind of flair. Yeah.
Yeah, and also like to change the, for example, the formatting, or like to bring my vocals like an octave low. I also use Little Alter Boy for that. Like
yes, sound toys. We love them.
Sound is amazing.
Amazing.
Which else? I love the Neve 1073, the preamp plugin from Universal Audio.
Me too. I put that on everything. Love it.
Yeah, no, and I love it on vocals, like just kind of like bring the high end a little bit, like just like a tiny bit. Also like Fab Filter Pro Q, like just to kind of like a little bit of EQ.
Yeah.
And sometimes I add the Culture Vulture from Universal Audio too, like to add some distortion, but it depends. Like for example, like in some songs of mine, I've added that, but in some others, I added as a return track, basically, so that it's not like fully there, because it can be aggressive. Like with certain tones, it can sound like harsh. So it's like kind of like doing it with the ears, like knowing like, oh, maybe this is better with this or that.
I love the Culture Vulture on like synth sounds, or soft pads. It just really amps it up, and it has a dry wet mix control on it too, which is nice.
Yeah, so I like that. So it's kind of like you can control it, and it's not gonna be like super distorted, basically. Also use sometimes the Decapitator.
Yeah, sound toys again, good stuff.
Even and the Devil Lock, like depending on how much I want to bring it kind of like to the front. And then I usually have like a bus sense, like for delay. I love the H delay from Waves. Like it's kind of like my go-to always. And in Ableton, I always use the ping pong delay. Like that's my go-to too.
Yeah. And you're in Live 11 as well now. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And the reverb, I like the Valhalla vintage verb.
Yes.
Cool.
Me too. That's my go-to reverb. I'll have to check out that Waves one. There was the H delay, you said?
H delay, yeah.
Yeah. I've had a bunch of Wave plugins I can't use now because some of them kind of get weird with the M1 with the new Mac. So I've had some issues, but I'm sure they'll fix that eventually, and they'll just get around to it.
Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah, they're just sleeping. Wake up, Waves, if you're listening. I want them. Bring them back. Bring them back, please. Yeah. Well, you did a recent workshop, and you did a presentation on tips and tricks in Live 11. And that was with, I think, the Modern Latin Music Summit.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I did that. And especially it was kind of like deconstructing a production of a song that I made in Ableton 10, and just kind of like seeing new stuff that I could do like now with the new things in Live 11, basically. And of course, like the first thing, like playlists, which is like great, because even like, for example, for trying stuff, when it's like, I want to try this solo or like this progression in the piano, whatever, and then just record a bunch, and then you can just have them there. This is amazing. And even like for vocals to be in a session, that's super easy, like to kind of like get the artist like, okay, let's just throw in ideas. So showing them like how playlists work and how it's so easy, like to even like put them up, like you just press the B button, like to select with the pencil, like I want this, or the shades of what you want.
So I'm sorry, I don't know if I understand. You said playlist. What do you mean by a playlist? Like inside Ableton? Or?
Yeah, inside Ableton. Yeah, they're called the take lanes.
Oh, okay. Yes, exactly. Yeah, take lanes are great. That was a nice upgrade.
Yeah, great upgrade. And I was waiting for that, like since I basically started using Ableton. It was like,
everybody was excited for that.
Yeah, so for that it was amazing. Also, the hybrid reverb is super cool.
Yes.
Even I've started using it like a lot, and like even not as a send, but actually on the tracks that I'm using, because it also has the mix fader and everything. But so you can make it wet or dry, and like the different like impulse response and everything. So yeah, that one's
it is really cool. Have you ever turned on shimmer mode in the hybrid reverb? You can get some really cool. It reminds me of Valhalla Shimmer. If you've ever played with that, it's very similar.
Exactly. Yeah, but, even like for those things, and it's kind of, you end up getting like sounds that are kind of like messing around, and even it sounds great. Like it's not like super reverby. So I like that it's kind of like discreet, but it works. And what else? Oh well, actually with like the MIDI stuff, like the new MIDI stuff, that you can like reverse MIDI.
Oh yeah.
Stuff. Like even for that, like I did like some crazy like experiment like with the song that I was showing, and I got like the keys of the song and just reversed them, and then like flatten that, and then like reverse that again. So it was kind of
interesting.
Like a nice it was kind of like a sweeping sound, but like it was super easy to make because it was just like hitting reverse on the MIDI and then randomize the velocity too, so that it wasn't kind of like always the same.
That's a cool trick.
Yeah, the randomize, I also use it a lot in like hi-hats now, to kind of like, if I don't want the hi-hats to always be kind of the same velocity or something, like it's just like, okay, like let's see what Ableton says.
Yeah.
If I like some, it's like, okay, I'll keep this, that. Yeah, to also kind of take lanes of like the different MIDI alternatives that Ableton comes up with. And then I'll just make a comp of that. So it's
that's really smart. Yeah. It gives you a bunch of variations and ideas of playing back those notes.
Exactly.
Yeah, I feel like velocity, the MIDI effect in Ableton is one of the most underappreciated effects out there. I mean, it can do so much. I love putting it on my kicks, and just to make sure that they don't like vary too much. It's like a MIDI compressor, sort of, I guess you could say. But
yeah, no, that's amazing actually, and it's super useful, to kind of manage the intensity of like how you want something like to be, fully out there or like not so much. But yeah, I really like that. In Live 11, and I was thinking, what else? From the new stuff.
We could probably sit here for 12 hours going back and forth, just nerding out.
Yeah, because I was, I can't remember the exact name of that plugin now, but of granular stuff. Like I've been using it now, like a lot, like as a boss send too.
It's not an Ableton device. It's a plugin, a third-party plugin.
It's an Ableton plugin.
Oh, Granulator 2.
Granulator. It's weird sounds that I actually use, kind of like even as reverb effects, basically.
Okay.
And stuff like straight there, like like a send, like a buzz. I just get kind of like this sparkly kind of particles. Let me see. Right.
Is that inspired by nature? Is that is that part of that pack that you're talking about?
No, I think it's not. Let me.
That's a really cool pack, inspired by nature. They have like a granulator type of device.
Oh, I think it's this one. Wait, the resonator.
Oh, a spectral resonator. Is that right?
Yeah, that's one.
Yes, I love Spectral Resonator.
Like changing, so there, like I'm just saying it here. Like, I change it always like to granular, and then like I just play with it. It's like, okay, like sending all of that, and I've used this a lot like on strings, and it's super fun because it's kind of like this shimmer, but it's also like not so present like a shimmer, like just kind of like little particles like jumping. Ooh, yeah,
it's a little bit of a texture type of thing.
Yeah, totally.
A spectral blur is really cool. I don't know. That's you can do some really interesting textures with that too.
Totally, yeah. Like those plugins to kind of like get like different textures out of like just a sound. Like I love that, like to be able to modify something that you have, like even like a take, or even if it's something like super simple, like with a live instrument or even the vocal. Like I just like to play around with them a lot. And actually like a plugin that I love from Ableton, that one's not new, like it's been like all the time, but the vocoder is great.
Yeah, what do you use it with? For just vocals, or?
I usually use it like just for vocals, but I love that like you can make it stereo, like the formatting, like even the attack like to make it super fast so that it sounds kind of like super precise with the vocals.
Yeah.
And it's so easy like to just link it up like with an external instrument. It's still like, yeah, okay, like with this synth or like this bass. So yeah.
A little bit of a Daft Punk vibe, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I love it. And it's like so easy to use. And like I've seen other like vocoders. Yeah, like there's some other plugins. But I really like that one. And it's like, yeah, no, like I always use the Ableton one because it's like it sounds great and like it works great. And it also is so easy to work with. It's not like a complicated thing. I love actually, yeah, like plugins in Ableton are kind of very intuitive. It's like, oh yeah, like there's this button, so like okay, assigning this and that.
Right. Yeah, I love that's very true. One of the things I love about live is once you learn sound design and the basics, everything's fairly easy to find. I think if you just play with it, you can figure it out pretty quick.
Yeah, it's like very intuitive, yeah, in that way. Because even like comparing, for example, when I started like producing, like even Pro Tools is like not that intuitive at all. Like it's hard. But then like Ableton, it's just like, yeah, it's kind of like flowing for the workflow, even like just dragging a plugin and putting it in the space and then there's a new track. I think that's great. It's still like, yeah, it makes it like so easy and kind of very laid back stuff that it's like, yeah, I don't have to stress about like making a new track and then like searching for the instrument, like just drag and drop and that's it.
Yeah, definitely. Hey, just want to give you a quick reminder. If you haven't checked out Melodics, make sure you do that. It's that really cool desktop app that you can download and you can plug in your MIDI controller, such as your push or a MIDI keyboard, practice your scales or practice your finger drumming. It's a fun way just to step up your skills practicing and gamifying the process like a way better version of Rock Band or a Guitar Hero. So check that out. If you want to get better at practicing, have more fun doing it, go to melodics.com. And if you decide to do the subscription, then save some money in your piggy bank and use the discount code LPO-20. That's LPO-20. And also, they have a free trial. So go check that out. You have no excuse not to download it and play with it and have fun. And yeah, give Melodics some love. And back to today's episode now with Ali. What would you say in the last couple of years have been some of your favorite projects to work on? It's a big question. You've worked on a lot of stuff.
It's a hard question. Yeah, because I feel like from each project, like I really enjoy kind of like, yeah, working with like different artists or like, yeah, the opportunities like to even make different stuff that I hadn't made before. But I feel, well, actually, an album where I worked that was, yeah, nominated for the Grammys this year.
Yeah, congratulations.
Thank you. That one was very fun to work with because it was super experimental, but also the song had like this folkloric Andean stuff. And yeah, kind of like a bambuco, which is like a typical Colombian rhythm. But then, yeah, like the artist wanted me like to just kind of like add my experimental like electronic stuff. So it was like, okay, I just got to make crazy like things with the like super traditional rhythm. So it was like a nice challenge because even like for me, like I had never done that music before. Like I had listened to that back in Colombia, but yeah, it was kind of like, yeah, I've never worked on this. So that was fun with GRAMMY. And I co-produced that track with Sebastian Chris. And well, this year and towards the ending of last year and this year, I've been working with this artist called Nicole Faure. She's from Peru, but super talented artist. And I'm very excited like for people to listen to what we've worked together. And she's like a sweetheart and super passionate about it, like her music and everything. And the new album I'm working on, the one I was mentioning of like 12 tracks and everything, is for Francisca Valenzuela, also an amazing artist from Chile. Super, super talented. And this one is also like very different from like everything I've done before. So it's like a nice.
Oh yeah? Like how so?
Yeah. It has like this kind of like throwback vibe, but also like, yeah, like some mixing of like folky stuff with rock, with pop. So I feel like it's nice to kind of like have that fresh air of like, especially in Latin music, like to be making something that's not out there like right now in Latin music. So I feel like that's nice, like to kind of like get a new window basically to make music that even like I hadn't made before on my own.
Yeah, so you said like you're doing a lot of collaborations. Do you like to work in the room with people, or do you feel a lot of times that you like to have some more time, kind of work on your own watch and be able to have the stems or whatever sent to you and play with and then send back and forth?
I like to be in the room like for the creation of the song, basically. Like if we're starting like to write a song and everything, like to kind of like get that human interaction is great, because even I did many sessions on Zoom and like they were great, but it's different like when you're in person, like you have the coffee break or like you just talk about life, and it's kind of like you get that moment like to really connect with people and have that raw vibe to write a song. So I think like that's great. But for production, like I really like since I was always kind of producing alone, like back in Colombia and everything, like I really like to kind of like be on my own when I'm like super into the production, because it's kind of like I get to like do everything, and also like I'm not worried about, like I always feel bad when I'm kind of in the zone and working and then there's somebody there and it's like I'm not talking to them or something.
Like bye.
Like I just feel bad because I'm super in like the session that I forget about everything that's around. So even with that, like I feel like when I'm alone, it's easier in a way, because I know that I don't have to kind of be a host or like being like, oh yeah, like let's eat or something, but it's just like focus on this, and then I finish tracks like super quickly. Like by myself, it's kind of like very, very quick now. But I feel it's, for example, with a specific artists that are super involved in their music, I feel it's great to have them in the room during the production so that they can give me their input too, like especially when it's artists that really care about like their art basically and like their message, so that I know like exactly what they're looking for.
Yeah, so if you're producing for another artist, having them in the room is definitely key. I've had that in my own experience as well. And it saves you a lot of headache later. You just spend all this time making something and then they're like, no.
Exactly. Like to kind of like, no, like, like if you don't like the sound, like we'll just like take it off, or like, maybe put this in or that. But I've only had that with very specific, not everybody is like that. I feel like I've had situations where it's like, like they're like, oh yeah, like send me the bounce, like do whatever you want, and then just send me like the bounce. And then others that are like, like I want to listen like to the process and everything. So I think like it's kind of like different for each artist too, like their involvement with their own track and everything.
Yeah definitely. I feel like when I collaborate with other people, it's like a very personal thing, because it's like a part of you that you're like putting out into the world in a sense, in a weird way.
Yeah. Like you're showing your soul to the world, basically.
Yeah, pretty much through headphones. That's pretty much what's happening. Yeah, I like your headphones, by the way. It says Ali Stone on it, doesn't it? Yeah, very fancy.
For me, yeah.
Did you like engineer those headphones yourself, or is that another brand?
But no, it's funny that like this one's, like I even didn't know that Vimora belongs to Roland, like they own Vimora.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and then when I visited their headquarters, they were like, "Oh, yeah, we're gonna give you headphones and everything. Like, just send us your logo." And then they made me like a bunch of like different like shields. So I have like blue, purple, black, gold, like everything. And like especially for my shows, that like usually the clothes that I wear like in my shows is like very like bright and kind of like if I'm a superhero, basically. So
no, that's cool.
Exactly. But it was a great gift, and they're actually super comfortable. I really like that, especially like to be kind of like working for long hours and even like at night. Like I usually use this like to mix, and then I just put Sonar Works, which is great, like to kind of like have a flat mix, like when it's like super late at night, because they're just like very kind of like light and they don't hurt my head or my ears. So
yeah, there's nothing more soul crushing than having really bad headphones while trying to mix. Like,
yeah, no.
yeah.
And yeah, like I have kind of like different headphones, like just to have like a reference with each one basically.
Mm-hmm.
But the ones I use the most are this ones and the Audio Technica M50 that sound to kind of like.
That's what I'm wearing right now, actually.
Yeah.
I love these.
Yeah, and those are also like super comfortable, and I like that those ones are kind of like bright too, so it's kind of like just to listen like to frequencies and everything, like just to make sure everything's kind of like working.
Yeah.
Make sure
Definitely.
Make sure that everything sounds like even good in an iPhone speaker or something.
So, I mean, to backtrack a little bit, I would love to know who taught you, I guess, as far as production or mixing, because I mean, you're really great. You produce a lot of really cool stuff, and I'm just kind of curious. Like, did you have a mentor that like really helped you get your feet in the door with mixing and Ableton stuff?
No, I actually like learned all of that by myself. It was
Wow,
my hobby that I just got like very passionate about and like very serious.
that's awesome.
Thank you. Because I actually, I had mentioned that I went to business school, but I started, like with this hobby of like making remixes and producing songs. And it was kind of like learning by the ear a lot. Like even like when I started producing, like I had no idea what anything was. Like I didn't know what a fader was, like what an EQ was, like compressor, like nothing. That I would just like kind of like put the plugins and start moving and see like what is this doing like to this that I'm playing. Like I didn't even know you could quantize. Like I would play everything like 100 times until it was like on time. Like I was super noob.
That's great.
And it was kind of like, I started like to get more passionate about it, and like I really wanted like to work my craft, like even if it was a hobby back then. So I just like subscribed like in a bunch of like production pages and like about remixing and like blogs and like all of that. Like I got this like 101 book of like mixing, like, so to even know like everything about mixing, mastering too, like just to kind of like get all this information and make my songs sound as the songs that I heard on the radio, because that was always like my reference, like knowing why is my song sounding kind of like not balanced. And then I found like, oh yeah, it's mixing. And then why does it sound like so quiet compared to others? Okay, mastering. It was kind of like finding all the journey. And it was kind of like a lot of practice by myself and like being very disciplined. Like I would kind of challenge myself, like I'm not gonna stand up from this chair until I get like this vocal to sound like how I'm imagining in my head like to sound. And that's how I kind of like little by little started like to learn all like the basics. And like especially with the tools that I had, it was kind of like I knew that I in that moment like I didn't have like a bunch of plugins, but it was like, okay, like I want to learn like how I can do everything with like what I have right now. So that also made me like kind of like super handy in a way, like practical. And like there's this quote, this saying that it's the ear, not the gear. And that's always my motto in life, because it's like, like in the end, you need like to know, like to learn with your ear, like to be able to have that kind of like acquired talent in the ear of knowing like this is how I'm gonna move this or that. It's not like just having a better birth of speakers will make your mix better. It's like in your ear, basically what you can do.
Yeah, it's those damn Facebook ads. They tell you if you download this plugin, you're gonna make music like Armor Van Buren. It's like it's a lot of practice, but that says a lot about you being that driven and just being really into teaching yourself and doing whatever you can to learn and grow. That says a lot about you. That's great. I also, last but not least, because we're getting short on time, I want to talk about some of the nonprofits and campaigns you've been supporting over the years. Like one is Women Working for Women. Maybe talk about that for a second.
Yeah, well, actually, Women Working for Women was the first one I got involved with that originated actually in Mexico. and I got involved with that one in 2013. So basically, when I started my career, they reached out to me, because they wanted me like to be like the voice for women in music production and like film scoring and everything.
Yeah.
And I've always been like super vocal about like female inclusion, real like equality, and kind of like getting paid the same and like all of this. Yeah, since 2013, kind of like always voicing like on that.
That's great.
Thank you. And now I'm also involved with We Are Moving the Needle, which is an organization that Emily Lazar created this year, actually. And it focuses also on moving the needle of women in music. And also in that one, like I'm focusing about the education of like youth that want to get involved in music, because I feel like that's crucial, especially for me. For example, like in my case, like I got super involved with production and everything, but it was kind of like, I know that if I had had this kind of like education more accessible in a way, and even when I was younger, like I would have gotten like into it way younger, because I basically started producing when I was like 20. So it was like kind of like starting like way later, whereas like if you start younger, like you can kind of like get your skills in a faster way. So with that, and even linked to education with Playing for Change too, which builds schools and like gives music education to communities of scarce resources. So like I really focus about kind of that part of like educating the youth. Like I feel education is super important. And to basically keep the kind of like societies evolving and everything, like in all stands. And I also got involved with this mental health organization last year, that we did campaign with the UN and the World Health Organization and everything. United for Global Mental Health is the name.
Oh wow, I didn't know about that. That sounds interesting.
Yeah, because I'm also like kind of like very vocal about like the importance of forgetting like your mental health, or even like physical health, like mental. It's kind of like super together, and especially for people in music, like that's kind of like something that hits super hard, especially in music. People are very kind of like lonely, and like we're all like in our own world and everything, and sometimes it can be like a little bit overwhelming. So work on that importance of like knowing that having the access to mental health, and like taking care of your mental health is just as important as taking care of your physical health.
Yeah, that's something I think that isn't talked about enough these days, is the mental health side, especially for producers, because you can write all this music and you put it out and it doesn't blow up or get as many shares on social media, and then you're sad and you cry yourself to sleep. That happens. It does. But yeah, I think that's really cool what you're doing with that organization. I also read that you have done some work with Playing for Change Foundation, which promotes education through music in scarce resources or communities. Is that similar to what you were saying? Okay.
Yeah. That was one of those. And I actually got connected to Playing for Change here in LA, that we ended up meeting at this Roland event, because Roland does a lot with Playing for Change, and they donate a lot of like instruments and stuff. But and I feel like it's super cool that they're promoting that part of educating people with music, and like promoting that kind of musical injection in all ages too, because there are students that are super young, but also like students that are way older. But still, it shows it's never too late, like to learn something about music, or like to play an instrument, or to kind of like get that artistic vein that you want to explore.
Yeah. I mean, it's therapy for me, honestly. Even if I don't make millions off my music, like it still makes me feel good. In the end of the day, it makes me a better person. So
exactly. I feel like that's what what all people in music feel about of making their own songs, and just like, even if you're not getting money out of it, it's feeling like the passion that you get about making a song, and like not feeling that it's work, like just having fun.
Right, exactly. Yeah, it's also nice to get paid too. So we love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. For sure. Well, Ali, I want to respect your time. This has been really fun. Thank you so much for hanging out. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with everyone before we go?
Well, with everybody that's connected to this podcast, if you have any questions or stuff, if you want to talk to me or like just check out my music, you can follow me on at It's Ali Stone or my website alistonemusic.com that has the links to like all my socials, music, stuff that I made for other people if you want to check that out. Let's connect. And if you have any questions about like gear or stuff, just send them over and I'll happily talk to you.
Yeah, I was actually on your website earlier and I was going to buy your sunglasses, but they were out of stock because I always try to support people on this podcast. So,
but I'll let you know when they're back on stock. So those rave sunglasses.
Yes, please do. I can always use more. They break so easily. It's crazy.
Exactly.
It's true. Yeah. Well, thank you, everybody listening. I'm going to include the links that Ali mentioned in the show notes to her socials and her website. Thanks again for hanging out. This has been great. Looking forward to the new album and everything else you're releasing, and we'll be in touch.
Thank you. Yeah, let's stay in touch for sure. And can't wait to hear and to share the new music as soon as it's out.
Awesome. Thanks again. Hey, thanks everybody for listening to the podcast. Make sure you like, subscribe, hit all those buttons. I would really appreciate it and would love to stay connected with you. Don't forget, if you want to join the newsletter, be the first to see new episodes when they come out, then go to liveproducersonline.com/newsletter, and I'd be happy to stay connected with you there. Also, if you don't own the latest version of Ableton Live, then just go to liveproducersonline.com/buyableton. That's liveproducersonline.com/buyableton. Thanks everyone for listening to the podcast. Much love, and I will see you next time.